Hi, and welcome back to the Coronavirus and Capitalism video series. I'm enjoying a lovely night staring out my window at the city beyond, and it got me thinking about economic systems. Specifically, in part 2 of this series, we're going to focus on systems of exchange. Before diving in, let me describe what the term economic system means. It refers to an organized way for a society to deal with the problem of scarcity by creating a framework for how resources will be turned into goods and services and then distributed in order to satisfy people's needs and wants. A shorter way to say it would be to say an economic system is a method used by a society to produce and distribute goods and services. I think economics textbooks do a bad job of explaining economic systems. The textbook explanation says there are 4 economic systems: traditional, free market, command, and mixed. This provides a limited understanding, and worse, it's very incomplete, and I think misleading. You may notice that the concepts of capitalism and socialism aren't even mentioned. So being the rebel that I am, I'm going to deviate from the textbook explanations a little so you get a much more accurate, more complete, and more realistic understanding of economic systems. My purpose in this video series is to help you understand the US's economic system, so to do that, we're going to focus on contrasting the free market and command systems. Textbooks usually focus on contrasting these two, then say a mixed economy is a combination of the two. That's pretty weak, and it leaves out some important elements. I'm going to describe economic systems based on 2 important categories: ownership and exchange. By ownership, I mean who owns the resources and ultimately the goods and services produced. By exchange, I mean how resources, as well as goods and services, are distributed. Let me show this visually. The red and purple axis will represent the economic systems that deal with how things are exchanged, and the 2 opposite systems on this axis are the command system and the free market system. The green and blue axis will represent how resources are owned and will focus on the opposite systems of capitalism and socialism. This visual is my idea, at least as far as I know. I mean, I've read a lot about this stuff and I haven't come across this graphic. So I'm going to name this visual the Ferullo Economic Systems Spectrum. Catchy, huh? I think this spectrum will accurately explain and show what each of these terms means, as well as how they relate and connect. The textbook people aren't going to be inviting me to any of their parties, which is just fine with me because I don't want to be at some lame party with people giving incomplete explanations of economic systems anyway. Let's start by examining the systems that deal with how resources, goods, and services are exchanged, that is, the command and free market systems. We'll worry about the ownership systems later. We'll look at the command system first because it's faster for me to describe and I think simpler for you to understand. A command economy is one in which the government decides what will be produced and who will get the goods and services. Another way to say it is that the government directs the means of production. A command system can also be called a centrally planned system because the government establishes a plan for dealing with the problem of scarcity. For example, in a command economy dealing with shortages caused by the coronavirus, the government would decide which resources to use to produce more face masks. It would decide how the face masks are going to be produced, and it would decide who is going to get the face masks. Let's take a look at some pros and cons of a command system. On the pro side, the command system creates an organized plan for society to accomplish goals, and it values equality, as all people are supposed to be provided with essential goods and services. A third pro is that the government can rapidly respond to problems by changing which goods and services are produced, like ordering the production of more face masks or ventilators in response to the pandemic. On the con side, the command system limits freedom as people have to follow the government's plan rather than making their own economic decisions. Another con is that there is usually a limited variety of goods and services available. A third con is that a command system is susceptible to government corruption. Command economy theory says that government leaders should make good decisions for the economy to help people satisfy their needs and wants. But in reality, government leaders may abuse their power to enrich themselves at the expense of others. There's more I could say about the command system, but I think you have a good starting point, so let's move on to examining the free market system. In a pure free market economic system, individuals act freely because there is almost no role for the government. There will be no government interventions or regulations except to prevent monopolies, which I'll explain later. Because there's no organized plan like in a command system, a free market system is based on voluntary exchange, meaning you buy and sell whatever you want. So for example, I could buy as much toilet paper as I want, and the business could choose to produce as much as it wants. This system may seem chaotic, and you may wonder how people's needs and wants get satisfied without there being a plan, so let's take a look at some important forces that drive the free market system. First is the idea of self-interest, meaning everyone acts in a way that best serves their own desires. Self-interest is often talked about in a negative way, but it is seen as highly beneficial for the free market system because it provides incentives for individuals to perform useful actions. Here's an example. If people are hungry and need food, Kathy may realize that she could grow vegetables and sell them to people. And if people right now are afraid to go to the grocery store because of the coronavirus, Jerome may decide to deliver groceries to people to make money. In both of these situations, Kathy and Jerome did something beneficial for society, but they did not do charity work. Instead, they were both self-interested in making a profit for themselves, and to do that, they ended up doing something good for others. In the words of Adam Smith, a guy who laid the foundation for people to understand the benefits of the free market system, it is not from the benevolence of the butcher, the brewer, or the baker that we expect our dinner, but from their regard to their own interest. You see, he is pointing out that people do useful things not because they are all charity workers, but because they are self-interested. Before you judge these people too harshly, ask yourself if you are also self-interested. If you have a job, do you go to work just to help out, or do you expect a paycheck? And if you go shopping, are you doing charity work, meaning you just give the store money and leave? Or do you demand a good or service for the money, and even try to negotiate a cheaper price to save yourself money? It is not that Adam Smith was saying people should be greedy and cheat others. After all, he was also a moral philosopher as well as being an important economist. Adam Smith's point was that he thought people were naturally self-interested, so society would benefit from having an economic system that accounted for that. You may be thinking that people being self-interested can lead to a bad outcome. Like if Jasmine decides to sell us poor quality toilet paper at a very high price because that will help her get rich. You know, the kind of TP that's all rough like sandpaper. It's cheaper for Jasmine to make cheap quality toilet paper, and the high price will help her get rich. This situation is good for Jasmine, but not good for the rest of us. Self-interest can cause problems, so another key force that makes a free market system work well is competition. When there are multiple businesses selling toilet paper, we are able to buy the best quality TP at the cheapest price. The competition among businesses to sell their products makes them constantly try to make their products better quality and come up with new innovations. It makes them have to keep their prices low, and it even motivates them to have good customer service. So yeah, competition is not just good, it's necessary for a free market to function. If there isn't any competition, meaning if there's a monopoly in which there's only one business selling a certain good or service, then there's really no market at all. Therefore, this is the main area in which free market theory wants the government to get involved, to prevent monopolies. If the government prevents monopolies and guarantees there's a market with multiple businesses, the competition among the businesses should mean we get good products at good prices without a whole bunch of government regulations telling businesses what to do. A division of labor is also an important aspect in a free market economy. This can mean two things. First, that people specialize in a job, like how Julie is a doctor treating patients suffering from the coronavirus, Bob is a farmer growing food to feed us, and Rhonda is a bus driver helping essential employees get to work. After all, if everyone did every job for himself or herself, there would be no need for a market for people to exchange goods and services. Second, there is a division of labor within a business as workers do one part of a larger job, but I'll discuss that when talking about capitalism. Hopefully this gives you a basic understanding of how the free market system deals with the problem of scarcity. Essentially, people pursue their self-interest and voluntarily exchange resources, goods, and services to satisfy their needs and wants. And all of this happens without the government making a plan. Adam Smith used the term invisible hand to explain that even without a heavy-handed government controlling everything, the market forces like self-interest and competition make the system work anyway. Like with the command economic system, let's take a brief look at some pros and cons of the free market economic system. On the pro side, the free market system gives people a maximum amount of freedom to do all kinds of things like make what they want and buy what they want. It also provides a variety of options because of the competition in the market. And it decentralizes decision-making so one government official can't mess up the economy for everyone. On the con side, the free market system leaves people in need on their own because there's no government to support people who are unable to work or are unsuccessful in business. Also, sometimes market failure occurs, meaning no one provides a good or service people really need. And the free market system tends to be more volatile as it leads to fluctuations between good times and bad since there's no stabilizing force to try to manage potential problems. So which system is better, a command or free market economy? That's not really for me to say. I've done my best to describe each system in an unbiased way. It's up to each person in each society to choose a system that best matches whatever goals and values are important. The reality, though, is that the two systems I just described only exist in theory. Real life is a lot more complicated, so societies combine elements of both systems, which is called a mixed economy. I think this is a weak term because it can refer to so many different variations. A country like the US has a mixed economy that is based on the free market system, but with command economy elements added in. And a country like China has a command economy foundation with some free market elements added in. The US and China's economies are very different, but they can both correctly be called mixed economies. This is why I think it's so important to also understand the ownership systems and how they factor in with the systems of exchange I just described, so let's turn to that now. Actually, before describing what capitalism is, let me pause for a moment and admire my view of the city. It really is a beautiful night out there. Actually, there's something I need to go take care of, so let's focus on capitalism and socialism in the next video. I gotta go. See you next time.